Hello, hello, and welcome to Fortune from Fae Tarot and Oracle card readings. This is part two of the Fairy Tale Oracle deck. So, on this one, we have the Fairy Tales Bluebeard, Wild Swan, Hansel and Gretel, Rumpelstiltskin, and Little Red Riding Hood. I'm just going to select some cards here. We've only got 4 of each, so we're going to have 2. I think we're going to have those middle 2 there. Let's see what comes out of these. I'm going to have those 2. Have those middle 2 there. And we've got Rumpelstiltskin. Oh, that one has jumped out. We're going to have that one. And then we've got Little Red Riding Hood. Right, let's start off with Bluebeard. I've done those. 66. The story of Bluebeard. 2 sisters were courted by a wealthy man with an unusual blue beard, and although they were frightened by his strange looks, the youngest eventually agreed to marry him. Her new husband informed her that he was leaving on a journey and gave her the keys to the house, explaining that she may open every door to his vast castle except one. Tempted by curiosity, the young wife disobeyed him and used the smallest key to open the forbidden chamber. A small room dotted with blood that housed mutilated and dismembered corpses of Bluebeard's former wives. The young woman understood what was in store for her and in her horror dropped the key. She picked it up once, but it was stained with blood, and no amount of washing would make it come clean. When her husband returned, she tried to hide the bloody key, but Bluebeard demanded to see it and discovered that she had seen the hidden chamber. He told his wife that she must die. She pleaded for time to say her prayers, as she knew her brothers were due to visit that day. They arrived just in time to save her. Okay. So if you chose that one, we have got the bloody key unlocking. You need to unlock. You need to unlock power. You have power that you just don't know you have. You need to unlock the confidence to actually be able to do what you want to do. And you have to save yourself. No one else is coming to save you, unfortunately. Sometimes we have to make a decision to save ourselves and take some action that might be quite difficult. But sometimes you have to take that action and trust that things will work out in the right way. Yeah, you need to get your confidence and save yourself from things, because no matter how hard people try, they can try to save you, but they can't completely save you. You've got to make that effort yourself to save yourself. Right, so that's the Bluebeard one. Now we've got the story of Wild Swans. I've never heard of this before, so this is the first time I've read it or seen it. 96. Oh, here we go. Far, far away, there lived a king with 11 sons and one daughter, Elissa. One day, the king married a wicked queen who sent Elissa away and then turned the princes into swans. With a weird cry, they flew out the palace window and far away into the wide world. Years later, Elissa set out to find her brothers, wandering for days through the forest until she met an old woman. When Elissa asked if she'd seen 11 princes, the old woman answered that she had seen 11 swans that wore gold crowns. Elissa hurried to the place where the old woman indicated, and at sunset she saw 11 white swans with gold crowns on their heads flying towards her. The swans alighted and threw off their feathers and stood there, Elissa's brothers. She asked them, "How shall I set you free?" But her brothers could not tell her. That night, the old woman came to Elissa in a dream and told her that to break the curse, she must gather stinging nettles and spin and weave them into shirts to throw over the swans, all without uttering a single word, a single sound. When Elissa woke, she gathered the nettles, and for weeks she toiled in silence. One day she heard the blast of the hunting horn. A king found her, wanted to marry her, and took her back to his home. The archbishop shook his head and whispered that she must be a witch to have so stolen the king's heart. The wedding took place even though the queen still had not spoken a word. Every night she crept away from the king's side in her chamber, where she wove one shirt after another. Soon after, she had no more nettles, so she went into the night to the graveyard and gathered an armfuls of the nettles that grew there. The archbishop saw her and told the king that she must be a witch to do such a thing. The king refused to believe it at first, but after he saw her visit the graveyard at midnight, he thought it must be true. Elissa was condemned to die by fire. She kept on spinning and weaving right up to the very last moment. And before the fire was lit, 11 swans flew down and made a ring around the cart with their great white wings. Elissa threw the nettle shirts over the swans, which transformed them back into boys. However, the youngest brother had a swan wing in place of one arm because a sleeve was missing from his shirt. Okay. Okay, so we've got the nettle here, resolutely facing your difficulties. There is difficulties there and there is things going on, but you sort of have to face them. They're not going to disappear without you dealing with them. So you're going to have to stand up and go, yes, I understand what's going on. You might need to get a bit creative to actually be able to deal with the problem. So we've got the swan here, creative inspiration. Maybe ask spirit guides for inspiration to see how you can deal with this difficulty and how you can move forward. There will be ways to do it. So it's completely possible to do so. But it's not going to be easy necessarily. Hansel and Gretel is the next one. So we've got Hansel and Gretel were brother and sister, abandoned in the forest by their parents because they did not have enough food to feed them. Hansel overheard their plans and filled his pockets with stones so that the siblings could find their way home. But the parents once again planned to abandon them. This time Hansel couldn't find any white stones, so he left a trail of breadcrumbs, which were eaten by birds, and thus Hansel and Gretel became lost. For 3 days they wandered through the forest, searching for a way home. They heard a white bird singing sweetly and followed it into a house made of bread, cake, and sugar, deep in the woods. The starving children began to tear off bits of the house to eat, and the witch who lived in the house called out, "Nibble, nibble, little mouse, who is nibbling at my house?" The children replied, "The wind, the wind, the heavenly child, the wind." and kept on eating. An old woman leaning on a crutch hobbled out. Hansel and Gretel were frightened, but the old crone invited them inside her cottage and gave them a delicious meal of milk and pancakes. However, the woman was really a wicked witch who had built the house of bread to lure children whom she wanted to kill, cook, and eat. Gretel was enslaved and forced to work hard, while Hansel was kept in a small cage and fed generously so that he would grow fat for more and more delicious. Every day the witch asked him to stick his finger out so she could feel how plump it was, but Hansel tricked her by holding out a little bone instead. At last the witch lost patience and commanded Gretel to boil a pot of water to cook her brother, but Gretel shoved the witch in the oven, which burnt her to a crisp. Hansel and Gretel returned home with help of another white bird and laden with the witch's treasures to find their mother had died. That's a bit uncheery. So, we have guidance. If you need guidance, go and ask for it. Also, keep an eye out for birds. Birds might lead the way, I think, here. If you see loved ones might be trying to get messages to you via birds. But yeah, ask for guidance if you need it. There is guidance out there. You just have to go and find the right people to ask. And you've got the Wicked Witch. Malevolence. Okay, so there might be someone out there who doesn't have your best interests at heart. Be really careful when you're looking who you're going to ask for that advice, because if you see, I'm imagining that's Hansel and that's Gretel. Foxes in fairy tales can be seen as cunning, so dove is pure. Make sure you'll ask someone pure of heart for help. Don't take advice from people that you don't trust. So we have Rumpelstiltskin next. Oh, here we go. A poor miller with a beautiful daughter once boasted to a king that his daughter could spin straw into gold. So the king ordered him to bring her to the castle so that she could be put to the test. If she failed, she would die. The miller's daughter sat weeping, which suddenly the door opened and an imp stepped in and asked her why she wept. The girl explained the dilemma, and he asked her, "What will you give me if I spin the straw into gold for you?" The girl offered him her necklace, so he sat down before the spinning wheel and laboured till the straw was spun to gold. The king was very pleased when he saw all the gold, but he was greedy for more. The miller's daughter was again locked in and told to spin a room full of straw into gold. This time the imp helped her in return for a ring, but third time he asked for a firstborn child. Desperate, the miller's daughter agreed, and the imp spun the straw to gold. When the king came and found everything just as he desired, he married the miller's daughter, and she became queen. A year later, she brought a beautiful baby boy to the world, and immediately the imp appeared in the room and said, "Give me that which you promised." The queen offered the imp all the wealth of the kingdoms, but he refused. The queen wept so much that the imp took pity on her. "I will give you 3 days to know my name. Then you shall keep your child." The queen spent the night thinking on the names she'd ever heard, and when she recited them to Imp, he replied every time, "That is not my name." The second day, she sent out a messenger to ask for the most unusual names he could find. Again, the Imp replied to each and every one, "That is not his name." On the night before the third night, the distraught queen was wandering in the woods, at her wits' end to know how to save her baby. She came across the imp dancing around the fire, chanting, "Tonight, tonight, my plans I make. Tomorrow, tomorrow, the baby I take. The queen will never win this game, for Rumpelstiltskin is my name." The queen was delighted when the little man came in and asked for the name. She pretended to guess, but then she pronounced the name. "The devil told you that," the imp shouted. And when he spun around and disappeared and was never seen again. So you've got the true name. You've got to know yourself. If you need to, you need to do some shadow work. Don't, if you know yourself, you don't need other people. People can't criticize you. So if you learn who you are and you learn your shadow side, so I think some shadow work might be in order. Um, if you know who you are, no one else is going to be able to get you. They're not going to be able to have a go at you because you'll be like, yes, that's me, and I accept me for who I am. I will work to do better, but you accept yourself for ultimately who you are. Spinning straw, impossible task. That's going to feel like an impossible task because society and the pressures of life get to you easily. You've got to step away from worrying about what other people think about you, which is a bit of an impossible task when you're not used to it. I'd recommend some shadow work and some counselling, possibly, if you feel you need that. Right, so the last one is Red Riding Hood. So this is for if you picked Red Riding Hood. Here we go, last one. Once there was a girl whose grandmother had sewn for her a Red Riding Hood that she loved so much that she wore it all the time and began to be named for it. One day her mother asked Little Red Riding Hood to take her sick grandmother some cake and wine and warned her not to stray off the path. However, the girl met a wolf in the forest who tempted her to wander off into the search of flowers. The wolf raced to the grandmother's house and tricked his way in, where he devoured the old woman. He dressed in her nightgown and nightcap and hopped into bed and waited for Little Red Riding Hood. She soon arrived, and the famous dialogue between the girl and wolf ensued. "Oh, grandmother, what big ears you have! All the better to hear you with. Oh, grandmother, what big eyes you have! All the better to see you with. Oh, grandmother, what big hands you have! All the better to grab you with. Oh, grandmother, what big teeth you have! All the better to eat you with." The wolf jumped out of bed, seized poor Red Riding Hood, and gobbled her up. Soon after, the huntsman came by the house, looked through the window, and saw the wolf dressed in the grandmother's clothing, snoring in bed. Guessing what happened, the huntsman slit open the sleeping wolf's stomach with a pair of scissors and found Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother trapped inside. He released them, and the filled Little Red filled the wolf's stomach with stones and sewed up the slit. When the wolf woke, he tried to run away, but the stones were so heavy and he fell down dead. Grandmother and granddaughter and huntsman lived happily thereafter. Test of courage. So you've got the red hood. So there's going to be you're being tested for courage, but there is ancient wisdom. There's ancient wisdom that will help you. If you need to ask for help, it's okay to ask for that help and ask spirit guides, ancestors for ways to get through that test of courage. It's not impossible to do, it's completely possible to get through it. But you might have to get creative and you might have to ask for help along the way and seek out some ancient wisdom there. Grandmothers are a very good source of information. Right, that is it now for these. That's the final part for the fairy tale oracle with the fairy tale telling involved in it. I'd love to hear which ones you select, which fairy tales you selected, where you're listening from. Please like, follow, comment, subscribe, share, everything like that, please, if possible. And I hope you've had a magical weekend and you have a magical week ahead of you, and I will speak to you all soon.